Welcome to eBuilder University's on-demand video training. If you would like to learn more about additional training opportunities, please contact your account manager. Now let's jump into Toolbar settings of the scheduling module.
Good day, everyone. This is Martin Estezarian, certified eBuilder trainer, and we're going to be continuing on the series on the schedule module. In this video, we're going to be reviewing all the tools supplied in the toolbar above the schedule. Now, some of them we used in the previous video, specifically when we were talking about adding tasks and applying templates. But let's go through the other ones and make sure that we understand exactly how to use these tools to our advantage and understand what they're there for. So let's do this in sections. The first section I'm going to start off with is what's conveniently labeled here as the task section. A lot of these we already used already. I just want to make sure we go through them very quickly to help you understand what to do with them. The first one, which is, I believe, one of the largest icons here on the toolbar, is Add a Task, and it does exactly that. As a reminder, when you click Add a Task, I will do that here. It will just simply add a task at the bottom of your schedule. It will add it as the last task at the bottom of your schedule, okay? So that's basically what it's for. Outdent and indent is simply positioning the activities inside your schedule, whether they're indented or outdented from the task above or below. This will help you determine whether a task is going to be a roll-up or a subtask of another, or if it will act as a roll-up of a task. It all depends. Basically, what you're using these is to position the activities appropriately based on how you want to manage the activities in your schedule. The templates. Templates is basically what you're going to click when you want to apply a template. Now, one interesting part here that I want to mention that I did not mention in the previous video is this feature here that says Save Template. Now, it's important for you to understand this because in the event that you create a schedule using a previous template, maybe a generic template, and you want to save the final copy of what you've created in the schedule as an additional template, eBuilder will allow you to do so. And when you save it, it will give you two choices depending on your permissions. If you have basic permissions, it will only allow you to save a template for yourself. If you have administrative permissions when you do this, you can do it for yourself for future use, or you can actually create it as an account-wide template. Please keep that in mind. But that's basically what you're doing with that button right there. Critical path, one of my favorites. So critical path in the scheduling world is basically going to show you where all the dependencies lie in your schedule. And it will show it more than likely in the Gantt chart. You'll notice that some of these lines kind of highlighted in red here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit so we can get a little bit of a higher level perspective on the project. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out. And you'll notice how that red line kind of follows the little path here along the different tasks. Now, the critical path concept is very simple. It's going to tell you what path in the schedule is the most critical based on the amount of dependencies that it has. In layman's terms, what that basically means is that what area of the schedule that if it changes affects the most part of the schedule. In other words, what activities are most of the activities most dependent on? And that's what will dictate the critical path. Meaning the path of criticality is going to make sure that you understand that if something changes in a specific area of that critical path, will it completely shift the outcome of your schedule? Now, the reason this is important overall is because in this case, everything's part of the critical path. I've created a very linear dependent schedule where every task is part of the critical path. But there are activities in some people's schedules where, there will be kind of outliers, tasks that are not dependent on another and tasks that other tasks do not depend on. So the critical path is kind of like a visual representation of what that major path is within the schedule that would affect the most of the schedule if changed. Undo, redo. This is something we spoke about earlier. This is simply just undoing some manual entries or clicks that you've done and redoing the manual clicks that you've done. Really, really cool. I find this to be a very helpful tool because a lot of people that use the schedule module are going to be doing a lot of updates. And if, let's say, they did 3 or 4 and they want to take 2 steps back, they don't necessarily have to go in and manually change their entries. They can just hit undo, which I think is the most popular one. Import, export. So import, we're going to talk about in another video. We're going to show you how to import items from other software, such as Microsoft Project, which is going to be part of my demo in the next video. So that's basically what it's used for. So I'll kind of wait to use that button and demo that button when we actually do that video. The second button here is export. And when you click it, it's going to give you 2 options, XML and PDF. Now, the cool part about this is that if you do export it in XML, other software such as Primavera P6 and even Microsoft Project will accept the components of the schedule in XML and automatically import it within their system. So that's why XML is an option here. PDF is actually a much more popular option, and I think pretty much everybody understands what it means to export something into PDF. It'll be a screenshot of what you see here in a PDF document. Snapshots, another very popular term in the scheduling world. Snapshots are often done in the management of a schedule because what you're in essence doing is you are taking a picture of the schedule to ensure that you understand where it was, how it is now, and where it's potentially going. Now, snapshots are typically done at a regular frequency. Some people do it every week, some people do it every month. Depending on the magnitude of the project, it will vary. But when you click snapshot, what it's going to do is it's first going to ask you to name your snapshot. I'm just going to label mine training so you guys can see it right away. And when you do so, I want you to go to this tab right here called Snapshot, specifically if you're practicing all this while you're watching this video. And if you click Snapshots, you're going to see multiple snapshots that have been taken against the schedule. I want to make sure you guys are aware of this. So basically what you'll be able to do is compare the snapshots to each other and get an idea as to where you were and as it compares to where you are now. So if I go back to the Task tab right here, it's going to take me back to my toolbar. Now, the Send feature here I think is really awesome. The Send feature is the new feature in the Schedule module, which allows you to communicate with the outside world. Now, what does Send exactly do? When you click Send, what you're in essence doing is you are communicating with someone either within the organization or outside of the organization, which I think that's where it's used the majority of the time. So when clicking Send, it's going to give you two options. Are you going to send the entire schedule, or are you going to send just an individual task? So in my email here, I have it open. I'm going to basically send myself a task. And when I do so, it's going to ask me, do I want to send it to someone within my organization, users within my organization, or do I want to send it to someone outside of my organization? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to my email, my eBuilder email. And I'm going to pretend that I am someone outside of the organization, and I will show you the results that will yield. Please comment on schedule. Okay, so I'm going to click Send. Oh, I missed something. You know, one trick I want to show all of you, and this happens a lot in eBuilder, is when you're writing out an email in a box that looks very similar to this, please make sure you hit Enter when you're done typing it in, because it will create this gray box, and that will confirm that you've added the email in. If you just hit Tab, for some reason it will not record, so just keep that in mind. When I click Send now, what's happening is this is being sent now to my email. And I will go there momentarily. I'm going to give it a couple seconds for it to process and go through all the servers to make sure that it receives it. But that's basically what it's for. Now, the result of that, what it's going to be, is that it's going to actually allow the person who received it to make a comment on that task, whether or not they are a licensed user. That's the awesome part. So if let's say you're working with a subcontractor, or if your prime contractor is working with a subcontractor, and you as the owner want to send something like a task or maybe a portion of the schedule to that individual subcontractor, you can, and they can comment via email. Now, the cool part is when they receive it, it's going to look just like the real thing. It's going to look like they're in eBuilder, even though they don't have a license. I think that's a pretty awesome thing. So we'll wait for that to process, and we'll move on to the rest of the tools and come back to that. Now, expand and collapse, pretty easy. If you look at the table here, obviously we have some major tasks. We have some subtasks. If I collapse, it's going to collapse everything to the roll-up tasks. If I expand, it's going to expand everything. Now, obviously, it's going to only retract it up to the highest level that we have. I know that this is a roll-up, but it's still a sub-level under overall. So when we collapse it, that's why you only see overall. Okay? Next is what I like to call the Gantt chart navigation buttons. So if you click Next, you'll notice that I'm kind of moving along the Gantt chart a little hard because we're a little bit ahead here. But if I go to Previous, you'll notice that the Gantt chart is moving left and right. And when we actually talk about how to position the Gantt chart on the screen, you're going to notice how easy this is. But in essence, what these are going to allow you to do is navigate from left to right along the Gantt chart and move you from task to task in a different way. Obviously, the only other option you have other than that is the famous scroll bar here on the right. If you scroll to the right, it'll move you this way and you'll be able to see the task manually. So next and the previous button are more mechanical ways of doing that. In the next section labeled baseline, it's going to give you two very simple tools, toggle and reset. Now the toggle is a bit of a mystery for most people because it's a very subtle change on the Gantt chart if you notice that, right? So in essence, what you're doing is you're toggling whether or not you want to see the baseline against a task. Now, the reason it's kind of a moot point at this point is because we're so early into our schedule that the actual length of every task will match the baseline. Right? So when we toggle it off and on, we're going to see exactly the same values. But if there is a variance there and we toggle this on and off, we will be able to see that variance between the gray line and in this case, the blue line. So it's very important for us to understand where we are with that because toggling will give us a very quick comparison as to the baseline and where we are with our current schedule. Now, the reset button is something you probably will rarely use. You must have permissions to do so, but when you click it, it's basically going to say, do you want to do this for the entire project? Now, if I click OK, it's going to give me another warning. It's going to say, there is a baseline already in place. Are you sure you want to override the data in the baseline? Now, this is a very important question because if you click cancel, you're going to kind of back away from this, but in essence, if there is a need to re-baseline your project, that would be the magic button to do so. I want all of you to make a note as you listen to this that there is a permission on the back end of eBuilder that you would still need to activate in order for this to happen. If that permission was not turned on, then you would not be able to re-baseline a schedule. Okay, so it's dependent on that permission. Because I'm an administrator here in this specific account, I can do pretty much whatever I want. But obviously the permissions will play a role here. And it's very important that you guys are aware of that as you work with the schedule module. Now, these are my favorite buttons here, the zoom, because they actually work with the Gantt chart. Everybody's different, but I find it to be a little odd when I have to zoom in and out manually. So if I zoom in, obviously it will zoom in the time frames, right? Notice I went from months to days of the month to actual dates and date ranges. I mean, I can zoom in very, very closely into this Gantt chart so I can analyze exactly where my schedule is. But my overall favorite button here is fit, because when you click it, it will actually fit it to the screen. I think that this is probably a little bit more popular, specifically if you're going to export this or generate this in another document. From an aesthetics perspective, it looks better. It's a little bit more easily consumed than when you're totally zoomed in. So I would argue that the out and the in are more for operational purposes as you kind of navigate your way through the Gantt chart and perform some due diligence. The fit is probably more for reporting and display. Finally, on the right-hand side, we're going to have the work time. This is what we call the calendar, okay? Now, when you click it, it's going to open up different calendars. Now, notice what our options are here in the legend. It's called work days, weekends, and exceptions. Notice how the weekends are all grayed out. And we currently don't have any exceptions here, but what are exceptions in eBuilder? This is something that can actually be set up prior to actually using the schedule module. Exceptions are typically holidays. So when the implementation team went into eBuilder for you and they set up the schedule module, one of the things that they probably asked you is what were your exceptions? What were your holidays? What were your non-working days, right? And the reason this is so important is because aside from the parameters that we went over in the first video of this series, it's also good to take into consideration the days that are non-working days. Because if you didn't, then the schedule would probably self-calculate that you are delayed if nothing was performed within that non-working day. So it's important that you guys get your exceptions straightened out and make sure that you understand where they are. Now, one improvement that I can't show you right now that we are working on in the schedule module, it's one improvement of many that we've made to the module, is that we are working now on the ability to use multiple calendars. For those advanced schedule people, we are going to have that in the near future. I just want to make you aware of it in this video. Currently, though, we just have single calendar functionality. Okay, so stay tuned for videos on multiple calendar. Okay. So that concludes kind of the whole toolbar set. Now, what I want to quickly do is I want to go into my email because I want to show you the email that we received when we actually send the schedule over to me as a recipient. Now, let me just go through my email real quick, make sure I light that up. And I'm going to show you what the recipient of that email is going to receive when you actually send the task. And let me remind you, it's basically used for communication, okay? That's all it's used for. So what we basically did is we sent an email to me as if I was a user. This is what it looks like, okay? So when you actually open up the email, it's going to look kind of like this. and it's going to give you some basic information, the start and the finish date of the actual schedule. It's also going to give you number of tasks in progress, number of tasks not started, etc. But what I want to do is I want to show you this section here, which says click here for details. Now, when you click this, what it's going to yield is a screen like this. Now, what I did was I specifically sent this person, me, myself, and I, a specific task to comment on. So in this case, I sent occupancy. And when I send this, I'm expecting this person to come in here and write a comment. Right? Now, basically, the email that I sent is going to have the message built in, basically of what I'm looking for. This person would be able to respond officially using this box. Now, when I click save, it's going to ask me for my name. I'm just going to write my first name. I'm going to pretend I'm with EB Construction. And I'm going to write my email. Okay. And upon writing my email, what I did is I just recorded that comment in the schedule, and this is the way I'm communicating back to the person who's managing the overall schedule, okay? Now remember, anything that you do in the schedule, at this point it's not lit up right now, but anything that you've changed in the schedule, it's very, very important that you actually save everything you've done. This concludes the video on the toolbar items that we have here. I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you for watching.
If you would like to learn more about additional training opportunities, please contact your account manager.